We've been talking about this on the couch for quite some time, Senator. But I want to ask you, do these social media companies, over 200 that he just cited,
right,
do they have a greater responsibility to work with the feds to track down these terrorists and attack homegrown terror?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is they've actually designed these applications to be encrypted. So WhatsApp, for example, is marketed as something that, and it's not just the FBI for purposes of terrorism. Law enforcement agencies cannot unencrypt this. So this is commercially available things that are now available for you to communicate with people encrypted in a way that even law enforcement, if they wanted to go back because of a crime, not just a terrorist act, would not have access to. And that's just, again, a technological revolution that's happened. There's been a lot of talk out there about government spying. Most of it is exaggerated and inaccurate, but it's led to people moving in this direction. But this threat, this fundamental threat that you just did a report on, is so different from the threat we used to face. And we still face that threat too, which is that someone from abroad would come here and conduct an attack. These are individuals that never leave the U.S. They're being radicalized online and inspired, not directed, but inspired to take action. And that is a much harder threat to get your hands around and deal with. And it's just one of the new realities of the environment today.
One of the things we saw with the suspect they shot, Usama Rahim, is he was married to a young woman. She was a convert to Muslim. They belonged to a local mosque. They left that mosque reportedly via the Boston Globe because they felt it was too liberal. He then began sort of terrorism proselytizing online,
right,
and spitting out some of ISIS propaganda in his own way. I mean, you can follow that stuff. You can see it. That's not in the dark space.
Right.
Are we able to move on that?
Well, ultimately, the volume of it, and that's what the director there was saying, or that individual that was speaking from the FBI was testifying to Congress on, and that is just the sheer volume of it makes it very difficult in some instances to track it all. Beyond it, it's a reminder that you have individuals out there that are being radicalized to take action. No one called them and said, apparently, and said, do this in Boston. They decided that was the natural course, and because they have, access to propaganda online that ISIS has been very good at putting out, English language, well-produced propaganda, and it's impacting people here. But you can't see the chatter online in many instances, but just the sheer volume of it sometimes is a daunting task.
But just the point of talking, you were saying that a lot of people who feel the government has too much access to our information is exaggerated. I mean, what do you mean by that? Because I actually do feel like they have too much access, and I can understand why people, if I knew how to encrypt things, I would. Like, I don't want, so is that wrong for Americans to feel like the government has been too intrusive?
Well, first I would say that the private sector has much more information than the government does. The commercial information available about every single one of us, what channels we watch, what magazines we subscribe to, what we like to buy when we use our credit cards, all of the stuff is monetized. It is packaged and sold for purposes of marketing. So people don't know that. That's true. Second, there is no instance, talking about the 215 program, which is the bulk collection of your phone records, people don't realize that those companies that hold that, first of all, there's no documented abuse of that program, not one. And if there is, that person should be prosecuted and put in jail. Number two, the only thing they're gathering are anonymous phone records. They're not looking at them. In order for them to look at it, they have to go to a court and show probable cause. And the reason why that's important, for example, the instance of that individual is, who else is he talking to? Because they're probably part of his plot. The third point people don't realize is, if your local police department wants your cell phone records, they don't even have to go to the court. They can just issue a law enforcement subpoena and get access to those records.
But we're talking about, I'm talking more about emails, like being able to read your emails, storing them. The government. I think there's a big difference between the government having access, and the government has more power to affect you, to prosecute you. I mean, if a company knows what toilet paper brand I buy, that's not really threatening to me.
But again, in order to go after an individual for their information, you have to be able to prove through probable cause that individual is linked to a foreign terrorist organization that is inspiring them potentially or directing them to take action. It's not you or me or somebody else, and it's a real threat. We've got to confront it. I recognize that it makes some people uncomfortable, but that some ISIS fighter could carry out a devastating attack is even more frightening.